Welcome back to Open Line. I'm here with Representative John Ray Clemmons, who is running for mayor of Nashville. Election is coming up in August. I want to talk to you about something that that I just hold near and dear, because we have run so many stories about our fire department, about our police department. Morale is low. Funding is bad, pay is bad. We're 100 officers short in the police department, and officers are flocking to other departments to get out right now. How do you address these issues?
Well, we need to show our first responders the respect they deserve. They're doing a lot for our community, and we've got to keep our promises to them and all working families in Metro. You know, right now I visited a lot of fire halls across the city, and the fire department is really suffering from a lack of resources and equipment and manpower. We have got to do a better job of the city of addressing these issues, and it all goes back to addressing infrastructure, you know, as a big challenge facing our city. But you know, these men and women who are keeping our community safe deserve our respect, and they deserve to have our, you know, for us to keep our promises as elected officials.
Meaning give them raises as promised.
Oh, they deserve the pay that they've been promised and the pay raises that they deserve.
Let's head to the phones right now. Lucy's been hanging on the line. Hi, Lucy. What's your question tonight?
Hey, y'all.
Hi. Go ahead.
Hey.
Jump right into your question, Lucy.
Well, I've got a couple of questions here. One about block grants and the others about potholes and paving here in Nashville. But I want to make a comment first. I want to say something about the teachers. They have now become the ultimate scapegoat, and they're not the problem. This goes all the way back to Brown versus Board of Education, court-ordered busing here in Nashville, and it was just set out to destroy public education any way that they can. And when you have everybody flee from public schools to private school, it worked for a lot of people for a while, but it costs a lot of money to run a school, and they have found that out. I have seen teachers teach in public schools but send their kids to private schools and complain about public schools, and it scared me. It's like, then how are you affecting the children in your classroom? I've seen teachers teach in private school because their kid got free tuition at that private school, but when their kid got into high school, they went to public school from another county and got their kids in Metro Davidson County here. When it came to the magnet schools, magically they got in on the whatever the lottery is. So it has been, now they've ran out of excuses, so they've come up with systems to make these teachers look bad. And these teachers have all these issues now from stripping down all the community that used to be in public schools, and they're using them as a scapegoat. So I'm behind these teachers. Now, Mr. Clemmons, I'm disappointed with the governor. He talked to that young lady from East Tennessee about her issues. I never heard another word on any of the news stations about his handling, his response, or his plan to cover that. And as far as his situation with Mr. Cassidy's assistant, I have been the victim of somebody trying to set me up on more than one occasion for a felony. Okay, and I was too smart for them to do that to me. That young divinity student, they probably were going to set him up on a pretty serious charge, and if the DA does not pursue charges on that, I'm going to say there is no justice in my state of Tennessee anymore. So I would like you to comment, if you please, could, Mr. Cassidy, of what are the good points, or we already know the good points because there's a super majority up there. What are the bad points about block grants? Why do the Democrats disagree with them? And as far as potholes here in Nashville, I'm ball joint broke. Y'all keep me broke with ball joints. There are potholes out there that will come up over my ankle that will fit in. What I see is a pothole crew go down the road, and then I go over that road or the other lane the next day, and there's still potholes. Yeah. My question is that privatized? And I'll take your response off the air.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Let's start with the block grant issue. This was a big issue in the legislature as well, a very divisive issue.
Right. So block grants are problematic on multiple levels. You know, they're using that as an alternative to Medicaid expansion. That's their plan, so to speak, for how to provide access to health care. In reality, what it is they're just wanting the federal government to trust this state with a pot of money and expect them to do the right thing. And we've seen problems with block grants across the country, or the idea of block grants and the money not being used accordingly. Right now, we're sitting here on the just a couple of months away from 180,000 children being disenrolled from TennCare. So is that the government and the administrators that we want handling a huge chunk of money in a one-time block grant on an annual basis just to have their own discretion to how they spend it? We've turned away billions of dollars that could have been coming into this state, could have saved multiple rural hospitals, and could have provided nearly 300,000 people with access to health care. And unfortunately, this supermajority chose to refuse that, and the excuse they provided was they didn't like the president at the time. Well, that president's been long gone, and that money has been sitting there. And unfortunately, that's our tax money. We've already paid those tax dollars, and those dollars are being spent elsewhere. We like to, the supermajority with which I serve likes to talk about how awful California is or all these other states. Well, guess what? They're getting our tax money, and they're using it for health care for their citizens. We should be benefiting from our own tax dollars. Not expanding Medicaid is fiscally irresponsible. And to try to argue that block grants somehow is a replacement or a sound alternative to that, it just, there's no logic to it.
If you are elected mayor, you have to withdraw from those issues and really focus primarily on city issues. Is that going to be hard? Is that something that came into your thought process?
Well, like I said, the issues on which I've really been focused at the state legislature, while there are many from health care to, across the board, the ones I've really spent the most time really focused on are transportation infrastructure, affordable housing, public education. And those are the issues facing our city. Those are the biggest challenges facing Nashville families. So I'll continue my work on those and continue to move our city forward, working on those challenges. But the reality is all these issues affect our families. Healthcare is something that is not just a state issue. It directly affects Nashville. And so that will always be a serious concern of mine. And especially with respect to General Hospital, making sure that our safety net hospital has the resources it needs to provide health care to those who need it most.
You've mentioned several times affordable housing. It is a hot button issue in this city. What are we doing right? We have a fly here in the studio. I apologize. What would you do differently if you were elected mayor? Anything particular when it comes to addressing affordable housing going forward?
Absolutely. We have an affordable housing crisis in this city right now.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the current mayor said it was not a crisis. He stood before the Downtown Rotary Club and said it was not a crisis. I strongly disagree with that. In the next 6 years, we're projected to have a 31,000 unit shortage of affordable housing. And that's not just lower income housing.
Right.
That is middle class, upper middle class families, nurses, teachers, first responders who can't afford to live in this city. Right now, as I travel around talking to voters all across the county, every day I hear multiple stories about someone's grandparent who got pushed out of the county, moved farther away from her grandchildren, somebody who had to move farther away from their job or their church. This is a serious issue that requires leadership and a vision to address this issue. Now, there's been a proposal put out there, this grand number of $750 million, 250 of which is supposedly supposed to come from the private sector, which would be fantastic, but the question is, how is that going to be spent? Right now, it's projected to be spent over a 10-year period by putting $15 million a year into Barnes Housing Trust Fund, and the other $350 million is a general obligation bond, I believe, into renovating these public housing.
Right.
And the renovation and mixed of public housing is great, and it's necessary. And mixed income housing and facilitating integration in our city, absolutely a worthwhile objective, but that does nothing to address the significant housing shortage facing our city. They're going to rehab existing homes, redevelop those. I believe the Envision Casey project, I believe it's already over budget and overdue. And so I think a lot of this money would be going into addressing those shortages over there. But at the end of the day, the biggest issue with that is it's not going to substantially increase the housing stock in this city.
Right.
We have got to have dedicated revenue streams, specifically going into like the Barnes Housing Trust Fund, on which nonprofits and private developers who want to build affordable housing can rely from year to year. Right now, even the $15 million in the current mayor's plan, that's not promised every year. That's going to be up to the whims of the council and the political whims of elected officials. That's not a promised dedicated revenue stream. It's a woefully insufficient number to do it, to carry out its objective. But we need a dedicated revenue stream. And the people with whom I've spoken in this town who are really doing the hard work on building affordable housing, so that we need to be putting at least $50 million a year
50 as in 50?
$50 million a year into the Barnes Housing Trust Fund, because with that they can build new housing stock in this city, because as you know, land prices are through the roof. That's the single biggest cost of any of these types of developments. And to make their financing work, they have to use all the available resources, grants, lower income housing tax credits, and those types of tools are available, but they have got to have this equity component here on which they can rely on an annual basis. So creating a dedicated revenue stream there, and whether it's using bond or however you want to fund that, or whatever's possible, we need to have that pool of money to address the housing shortage in this city that we're projected to have over the next 6 years for the benefit of all families.
All right, we have to take another quick break. If you want to sneak in a question, this is your opportunity to give us a call during the break, 615-737+. Stay with us.